Yo, what's up? This is Fantasy Feeling with DFS Army, and this is your Week 3 Millie Maker review. All right, before we hop into the Millie Maker, real quick, want to shout out some DFS Army wins. It's not a main slate. It's not a DFS Army, NFL DFS slate if we don't have some big wins. So shout out to Ant23T, $15,000. So close to a takedown of 80,000. So really good day though. Definitely not going to cry about making 15K on this slate. So shout out to Ant. Also, Zapple, 2 contests here. Same score. Was able to get first for 5K in the 5K to first, and then get 7th place, get another 5K as well. So 10K between these 2 contests on the showdown. Really good stuff. We got 512 Football Man. He actually did very well across multiple contests, multipliers, specifically main slate hit a multiplier, and on the showdown hit a multiplier. So we love the multipliers. That is something that we preach at DFS Army. Contest selection is crucial. Speaking of contest selection, I hit low field, $50 entry. I think it was like 300 entrants, 3rd place. So $500 ended up being a profitable day for me, besides having a bunch of CD Lamb who got a donut. Small field is where it's at. So that's one of the things we teach at DFS Army is your contest selection. We want to also play the Millie Maker too, because you can win the Millie Maker. Of course, we had a DFS Army VIP take it down this year. Not this week, though. We're going to look at what won it. Really wanted to go to Fantasy Labs again, look at MME strategy of top DFS players, but Fantasy Labs, they just can't get their stuff together. So it's just going to be, over on DraftKings, just looking at the top lineup. Now, this was an incredibly rare lineup. You will never see this again. You will never see Trey Tucker score 3 touchdowns again and score 43 points, 145 receiving yards. Just absolutely absurd. And, it's something that we preach. There's something to be said for building the right lineups, building correlated lineups with proper leverage to win the contest. And then also you just have to get lucky sometimes to win a large field GPP like this, as he did with a Geno Smith stack here. Geno Smith double stack. Yeah, that's annoying. Geno Smith double stack with a Trey Tucker and Brock Bowers. And there was no bring back here, no Washington players. Jonathan Taylor was a smash. He's a guy that we certainly had on our cheat sheets as a core player. We look at pretty close to core, 3.5, 4.5 stars, depending on who you were looking at. I certainly had him as a core player we'll see it when we get to my cash sheet, as well as the Jordan Mason. That was a great spot for Jordan Mason. He was ranked highly on most of our coaches' sheets. Really good matchup for Jonathan Taylor. And then just Jordan Mason as the chalk value running back who 26 points. He smashed. Pierce Saul was a guy that we got on later at DFS Army. And, he ended up being pretty high owned, I would say, just because, most of the content in the week wasn't looking to be high owned. But once the news came out Sunday morning that Jennings wasn't going to play, we started jamming him in a DFS Army, and certainly some of the field did as well, as he got up to 11%. Not chalky, but, not like the 5% that we were seeing earlier on in the day. So this lineup obviously had the contrarian Geno and Tucker and Bowers stack, but a lot of chalk. So Jonathan Taylor, chalk. Jordan Mason, chalk. Christian McCaffrey, chalk. So, that's something we talk about. It's okay to eat chalk if you are going to get different in other spots. So in the right builds, it certainly makes a ton of sense, as it did with this Geno build. Very contrarian. Like, it wouldn't have made a ton of sense to play a Caleb stack, for example, in a large field GPP like the Millie Maker that's chalky, and then eat all this running back chalk. But in a build like this with Geno, this certainly makes a lot of sense. Metcalf, you didn't really need Metcalf. That's the one player you didn't need. You really didn't need Brock Bowers either, but that's kind of how it goes. You did need the Vikings D, 30 points. So yeah, really good stuff. Overall, still a contrarian lineup, but as we often see, and this is kind of one of the things to take going forward, the lessons to take going forward, we often, when we get these value chalk running back weeks, you will often see higher than normal, total ownership. So it was about 119 total percent. Past couple weeks before that, we were seeing, just like 100%, 90%. So definitely keep that in mind. Let's see what number 2 did. So yeah, number 2 had basically the same build. Just had Jacoby Myers in place of DK Metcalf. Let's see the third lineup. Marcus Mariota. And yeah, Mariota, 5x his salary. That's definitely enough to be in the winning lineup. Unfortunately, if you had Mariota, like you probably weren't getting to Trey Tucker. That's just like one of those things where if you're like using an optimizer and you're building Geno stacks, like it's gonna force in a Trey Tucker in some lineups, and it just takes one. And you really wouldn't have got there with a Marcus Mariota. But other than that, like there were some really good plays overall here in this build. The love JSN, Garrett Wilson. I was on Garrett Wilson with Tyrod and thought he might get a boost. Liked Hunter Henry, liked Drake May as well. And obviously, Henry smashed at tight end. It was a top scoring tight end on the slate. So really good lineup, really close. Still 150,000. Let's see what Hicks did here. So now this was a chalky build. Now, the one spot that he got different, I guess JSN didn't end up really being that owned. Neither did Ferguson. But Adunze, chalk, really chalky. Just a lot of chalk. Mason, Taylor, but Vikings D at 4%. So that was definitely how the lineup got different. So, and Ferguson just right above 10% there. 5th place, we got Mariota again. Similar builds, but this one got Trey Tucker. So he got to Trey Tucker and pretty close. Pretty close. All right. And then Justin Herbert. This is interesting seeing Justin Herbert. He didn't even hit 20. But, I mean, just pretty much crushed every other play here and was able to get Trey Tucker in that lineup. So apparently I was wrong about the Trey Tucker. Apparently enough people were on Trey Tucker that, they would have played him as a one-off. I'm guessing some of these guys were using an optimizer. And if you're jamming in Bijan and Jonathan Taylor of the world, these guys that are expensive, these double pay-up running backs, like the optimizer is going to be forced to jam in like a 3,400 player, right? And that's exactly what happened here. And he obviously was the guy that was needed. And we see another Geno stack. This one's a Caleb without Tucker. So Pearsall, Adunze, no bringbacks. And that certainly makes sense because Lamb certainly crushed a lot of lineups. I'm guessing a lot of bringbacks did have Lamb. And more Trey Tucker. So a lot of Trey Tucker. Let's see if there's any guys that we recognize here. Ooh, this is our boy Sliders. DFS Army VIP Sliders. Put 95 lineups in here. 1,500 here. So good job for Sliders. Sliders is one of those guys. I've said this multiple times. He's going to win the Millie Maker eventually. He gets too close too often. So, I think it's going to happen for Sliders eventually. This was a Caleb to a Dunze stack with a Ferguson bring back. So the double pay up running back, I like that. Mason value, Adunze, JSN. So pretty chalky lineup for Sliders, like some of those other ones that we saw, but got different with the low Vikings D. And honestly, I would have thought Caleb and obviously Dunze was really really chalk. 41% of the field played him. But I would have thought Caleb and Ferguson would have actually ended up being higher owned than that. they were pretty much right around their projection. So it wasn't one of those instances where, that's what the projections were and people, just ate that chalk and then it, really inflated their numbers. I don't know. I would have thought that more of the field would have been on those guys, because when you're seeing like Ferguson with 10% ownership, you're like, that's not really a lot. I'd expect him to be a lot higher than that because it's such a good game environment. Everyone's going to jump on it. And when we flip the cards over, it's actually going to be like 20%. But that certainly wasn't the case with Ferguson here. Like I said, guys, I'd love to look at the MME strategy of top DFS players. But until Fantasy Labs gets their stuff together, not going to be able to do it. And I don't want to push the show too far back, because by Tuesday, we're already looking at week 4. So let's kind of finish this up here with my cash lineup. So, good week for me, profitable week, even though I had like 25% CD Lamb in tournaments, and that, that crushed a lot of my tournament builds, and, just kind of took a ROI hit on what it would have been probably a really good day. Did well in cash and did well in the small field tournament, so to turn a profit. And that's something that we preach at DFS Army. You got to do well in your cash games and small field, and that helps you build a bankroll so that you can take those shots on those large field GPPs. And, we can essentially have these screenshots. So you play long enough that you can have these big screenshots, and, you could stomach all the losses. So cash, I thought it was pretty clear. Went with Marcus Mariota as the top quarterback. And by the way, guys, if you like these reviews, let me know. Hit that like button while you're here. Let me know how the week went for you. But I had Marcus Mariota. He was a guy that I got on late. I thought Jalen Hurts, Caleb were all fine. But I actually loved just the lineup with Marcus Mariota at 4K. That allowed me to get Kenneth Walker, get Jordan Mason, get Christian McCaffrey. So I ate the chalk value running backs. And as opposed to going to both Bijan and Christian McCaffrey, I thought once Charbonnet was out, Walker was a guy for me, along with Mason. You'll see I had him as a cash core, Walker and Mason as cash cores. And that just allowed me jam in Christian McCaffrey, the expensive running back, in a really good spot, and then pay up for Puka and JSN, because these are guys that I know are going to get elite volume. I really am not a huge fan of the value wide receivers. I want the studs. I want the guys that aren't going to get 9 points like Jacoby Myers. You string 2-3 of these guys, these 5K guys together, and suddenly you just don't have the floor and ceiling combination that you do with the JSN and a Puka Nacua, which really helps you hit the cash line. I had Puka as him and JSN as top plays, along with CD Lamb. And then, the value guys were Jacoby Myers, Adunze, and Keenan Allen. CD Lamb was a good play. He just got hurt. There's absolutely nothing you can do that. If you played CD Lamb here, for example, and you had a similar lineup, like, that's just bad run. You just ran bad because he got hurt. I almost played CD Lamb, but I just like the lineup a little bit better. I liked Ferguson in here, and he smashed. Obviously, I loved that game environment. And, obviously, I think Lamb getting hurt helped Ferguson, but I still think Ferguson would have given us a good enough score, probably, 10 points or whatnot. And that's certainly good enough for a 4K tight end in cash. And then Steelers D really came through. Didn't expect 16 points from them, but I did. They are a good defense, and I had a little bit of an extra salary, not a huge pay up. So I liked that defense there. But yeah, overall, I think I won 23 out of 25 head-to-heads. Good, profitable cash week. That's going to do it for this, guys. If you would like to join the wall of winners that we have each and every week, we don't have the amazing deal that we had at the start of the season, which I told you to get in on, but we still have 10% off. You can get 10% off a VIP subscription with my code FANTASYFLING. The link will be in the video description. That's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. Make sure to stay subscribed to the channel. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. A lot of content coming your way. Tomorrow, Underdog Fantasy First Look. I'll be doing that, hopping into Battle Royales. We got Geek doing DraftKings and FanDuel First Look. We got the Draft Battle Pod. Me, Geek, and Sticks coming on this week. So much content coming your way. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and we will see you next time.